this is somewhat exceptional procedure at this stage of a bill's passage. May I first address the points and questions raised by the noble Baroness Lady Brinton, and I'm grateful to her for the opportunity to provide some clarity on various aspects of the infected blood compensation scheme. On Monday, as the House is aware, the Infected Blood Inquiry published its final report. This was, by any standards, a very significant day. As the Prime Minister said, the report shows a decades-long moral failure at the heart of our national life. So the importance of ensuring that we provide a clear commitment from all sides of the House, as I believe there is, on doing what is right for the infected and affected victims cannot be overstated. We must progress this legislation, and we must continue to engage with the infected blood community on the details of the proposed scheme, ahead of them being set in regulations. And I hope all parties join me in that sentiment. Let me turn to the specific questions raised by the noble Baroness Lady Brinton. First, let me cover the issue of interim payments. I'd like to reassure the noble Baroness that this legislation still provides for the duty of interim payments to the estates of deceased infected people where payments were not previously received. In addition, a further interim payment of £210,000 is being made to living infected persons in recognition that this will meet the needs of those most likely to be disadvantaged by the passage of time. This payment will be delivered separately by the infected blood support schemes. The government is working to deliver these payments to the living infected as a matter of urgency. The Department of Health and Social Care laid a written ministerial statement this morning to seek a contingencies fund advance to make these payments in England. And this morning, the Minister for the Cabinet Office met with the relevant health ministers in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to discuss these operational details. We're working with the devolved administrations to make these payments swiftly across the UK, and I am assured that we share a joint determination to make them as swiftly as possible. Once we finalise the process with the devolved administrations, those due to receive these payments will receive details of the date of payment directly from the infected blood support scheme that they are registered with. All interim compensation payments will be deducted from any final compensation payment. The noble Baroness raised questions on the definition of hepatitis C and related matters. In line with the recommendations of the Infected Blood Inquiry, those infected with hepatitis C will be eligible for compensation, and this includes those whose infection lasted less than 6 months and those whose infection became chronic, by which we mean lasted more than 6 months. Those who had a chronic hepatitis infection that has now cleared as a result of successful treatment will still be eligible to claim compensation. In regard to the questions that the noble Baroness has raised on how the core route has been calculated and the other conditions which indicate hepatitis C progression, let me reassure her that, as announced by the Minister for the Cabinet Office in another place, Sir Robert Francis will now conduct an engagement exercise with the community before regulations to establish the scheme are made, and further details of that will be released shortly. The noble Baroness also asked about the illustrative tables providing figures for living infected persons only, and this is because awards in relation to deceased persons with an infection have a greater degree, much greater degree of variability. For example, depending on the duration of their illness before they passed away. So publishing an illustrative table, given that awards will differ quite markedly depending on individual circumstances would, in our view, not be very helpful. Compensation with regard to a deceased individual will be distributed to the estate, as the noble Baroness mentioned, and bereaved partners and other dependent affected persons. The government is also providing a technical briefing with key representatives of the infected blood community to explain the government's proposals as set out on gov.uk, and I'm confident that that will be a useful discussion. The noble Baroness asked a further question about financial loss incurred by affected dependents of a deceased infected person. Where an infected person has sadly died, those who were reliant on them at the time of their death, for example, a partner or child under 18, will receive a financial loss award under the scheme to recognise this loss. On the duration of the blood support schemes, let me reassure the noble Baroness that the establishment of the scheme will not have any immediate impact on the support payments received through the infected blood support schemes, and there will be no gap in the payments provided to beneficiaries. The support schemes are delivered separately in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and decisions on individual schemes will be for the devolved administrations. No one will be worse off under the under the final compensation scheme than they would have been under existing support schemes. However, the infected blood compensation scheme will compensate for both past and future losses suffered as a result of infected blood. Once assessed under the scheme, the applicant will be able to choose how to receive their compensation as either a lump sum or periodic payments. And this means that those who value the security of a regular payment will be able to receive compensation in this way. I hope that clarification is helpful. In the event that the Infected Blood Compensation Authority assesses that a person is entitled to less compensation than through the compensation scheme than would have otherwise been paid to them through continued infected blood support schemes payments, an additional top-up payment will be provided to bring the compensation they receive up to the level of the support payments. Any top-up payment awarded will take into account other compensation payments that a person has received through the scheme, either in their own right or as an estate beneficiary. This will ensure that no one will receive less compensation through the compensation scheme than they would have received through the payments they would otherwise have been entitled to through existing support schemes. My Lords, I hope my words have provided reassurance to the noble Baroness and more widely the infected blood community, many of whom I know have followed the passage of this legislation with close attention. As we've seen throughout the passage of the bill and following the announcements this week, there is cross-party agreement to progress work on infected blood, and the government will continue to deliver what was set out on Tuesday. As we reach the concluding stages of the Victims and Prisoners Bill, I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of my noble friend Lord Bellamy and my noble friend Lord Rowborough in addition, to those noble lords on all sides of the House for their amendments, engagement and collaboration throughout the passage of this bill. Through the bill stages in this place, we have between us made vital changes to strengthen code compliance measures for victims, establish the body to pay compensation to victims of the infected blood scandal, and bring forward a package of reforms for those sentenced to imprisonment for public protection sentences. I am confident that this bill leaves this House as a package that truly delivers for victims and the public. In expressing thanks to noble lords as I have, and mindful of the difficulty of singling out colleagues by name, I extend a particular thank you to the Victims Commissioner, my noble friend Lady Newlove, whose expertise has been vital throughout these stages. Lastly, my lords, on behalf of my noble friend Lord Bellamy and Lord Roborough, as well as myself, I express my deep gratitude to the members of the Bill team and all officials in the Cabinet Office whose hard work and professionalism have been exemplary, and were it not contrary to custom and practice, I would mention them by name. My lords, this is an important piece of legislation, and I'm pleased that it will make it to the end of its parliamentary passage ahead of dissolution. I beg to move that this bill do now pass.
The question is that this bill do now pass. As many as of that opinion will say content, contrary not content, the contents have it.